My daughter uninvited me from her wedding because I, quote, wouldn't get along with her new family. I canceled the check for the wedding venue and used the money to book a 6-month world cruise. Leaving the day before her ceremony, they thought her wedding was the most important event of the year. But my departure was about to become the only thing anyone would remember. Thanks for being here, guys. I'm glad that you made time to watch my story. Feel free to express your views on the story. In the meantime, stay with me for the story of how a mother's quiet exit made more noise than any celebration ever could. The dismissal came not with a bang, but with the quiet, clinical chill of a text message. I was in my garden, my hands deep in the soil, tending the hydrangeas my late husband, David, and I had planted decades ago. My phone buzzed from the pocket of my apron. I wiped my hands on a cloth and read the words that would neatly sever the final, frayed thread of our relationship. Hi Mom. Have been thinking a lot about the wedding, and Mark and I have decided it would be best if you didn't come. His family is going to be there, and it's just not a good dynamic. We don't want any awkwardness or drama. I'm sure you understand. We'll send you pictures. I'm sure you understand. The 4 words were a masterpiece of passive aggression. They were not a request for understanding, but a command for my silent compliance. My daughter, Jessica, was not asking for my opinion. She was informing me of a decision that had already been made. I was being edited out of the most significant day of her life for the sake of a good dynamic. I sat down heavily on the stone bench, the phone feeling like a cold, dead weight in my hand. For years, I had navigated the treacherous waters of Jessica's relationship with Mark and his family. His mother, Emily, was a woman of formidable opinions and a thinly veiled disdain for what she considered my simple, middle-class life. She saw me as uncultured, my home as provincial, my life's work as a primary school teacher as quaint but unimportant. I was not part of their world of country clubs, European ski trips, and casual condescension. I had always been polite. I smiled through dinners where the conversation revolved around stock portfolios and yacht club regatta. I nodded graciously when Emily gave me unsolicited advice on everything from my garden to my wardrobe. I endured Mark's patronizing tone. When he explained complex financial concepts to me as if I were a child, I did it all for Jessica. I swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, and wore a placid mask of acceptance, because I wanted my daughter to be happy, and this was the life she had chosen. I had assumed my quiet endurance had earned me, at the very least, a seat in the back pew. Apparently, I was wrong. My mere presence was now considered drama. It wasn't that I might cause a scene. It was that my existence itself was the scene. I was the visual reminder of a past Jessica was desperate to shed, the living embodiment of a simpler life she had outgrown. Uninviting me wasn't about preventing a fight. It was about curating an image in which I had no part. I didn't reply to the text. What was there to say? Pleading would be pathetic. Arguing would be pointless and would only prove her right about the drama. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved through my house in a fog of quiet shock. I saw ghosts of Jessica everywhere. Her first-grade drawing still taped inside a kitchen cabinet, a small clay pot she'd made in summer camp, the worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird we had read together, its pages filled with her teenage annotations. How had that girl, so full of questions and fierce affection, become this cold, calculating stranger who could dismiss her own mother with a text message? The answer, I knew, was a slow erosion. It was years of Mark whispering in her ear, of Emily's subtle and not-so-subtle criticisms, of Jessica's own desperate desire to belong in their world. She had paid her entry fee with small pieces of herself, and now, for the final payment, she was offering me. That evening, I sat at the dining room table, the one where David and I had hosted countless family dinners. I pulled out the wedding file. It was a thick binder, meticulously organized. For the past 6 months, it had been my part-time job. Jessica and Mark were far too busy with their high-powered careers to handle the minutiae of wedding planning. "You're so good at this stuff, Mom," Jessica had said, offloading the entire project onto my lap. So I had taken it on. I had spent hours on the phone with caterers, florists, and musicians. I had negotiated contracts and coordinated schedules. And, most significantly, I had paid the deposits, all of them. Jessica had offered a vague promise of settling up after the wedding, but we both knew the money was coming from the inheritance David had left me. He had wanted it to provide for my comfort in my old age, but he would have wanted his daughter to have a beautiful wedding, too. Or so I had told myself. I opened the binder to the most important tab. Venue. The Northgate Manor. It was a stunning historical estate with sprawling gardens and a grand ballroom. The kind of place Emily had casually mentioned was appropriate for a family like theirs. It was also breathtakingly expensive. The deposit had been 20%, but the final, non-refundable balancer, staggering $50,000 was due this Friday. I had the check already written out, sitting on the desk, waiting to be mailed. It was the largest single expense, the cornerstone of the entire event. Without the venue, there was no wedding. I stared at the check, made out to Northgate Manor, my signature neat and clear at the bottom. And then I looked at the text message still glowing on my phone screen. "We don't want any awkwardness or drama." Something inside me, a quiet, patient thing that had been dormant for years, finally clicked into place. It wasn't anger that I felt, not a hot flash of rage. It was a profound, clarifying, and liberating sense of calm. They had made their decision. They had drawn a line. And now, I would simply, quietly, respectfully, honor it. I was no longer part of the wedding. Therefore, my contribution to the wedding was also no longer required. The logic was as simple and clean as their dismissal of me. I picked up the check. And with a steady hand, I tore it into 4 neat pieces and dropped them into the wastepaper basket. The next morning, I did not call Jessica. I did not text her back. Instead, I drove into town and went to a travel agency, a charming little place I'd walked past 1,000 times but never entered. Inside, a kind-faced woman named Sarah asked me where in the world I wanted to go. "Everywhere," I said, the word feeling strange and wonderful on my tongue. For years, David and I had dreamed of traveling. We had a map on our study wall, dotted with pins marking the places we wanted to see. The fjords of Norway, the temples of Kyoto, the markets of Marrakesh, the vast, empty plains of the Serengeti. But life, as it so often does, had gotten in the way. Mortgages, careers, raising a child. Then came his illness, and our world shrank to the 4 walls of a hospital room. After he was gone, the thought of traveling alone was too painful, the world too large and empty without him to share it with. But now, something had shifted. The world no longer seemed empty. It seemed full of possibility. A future that was not defined by being Jessica's mother or Emily's polite punching bag. A future that was just mine. "I have a specific budget," I told Sarah, thinking of the $50,000 that was no longer destined for, and floral arrangements. "And I have a specific departure date." We spent the next 3 hours mapping out an adventure. A 6-month grand voyage. It wasn't a luxury cruise on a monolithic ship. It was a curated journey, a tapestry of smaller ships, trains, and boutique hotels. It would begin with a transatlantic crossing to Lisbon, then weave through the Mediterranean, transit the Suez Canal to the wonders of Egypt and Jordan, explore the coasts of India and Southeast Asia, visit Australia and New Zealand, and finally, cross the Pacific to South America before flying home. It was the trip of a lifetime. David's and my lifetime. And I would take it for both of us. The departure date was critical. Jessica's wedding was on Saturday, June 15th. The cruise departed from New York on Friday, June 14th. "It's perfect," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in what felt like an eternity. I paid the full amount with a bank draft, the transaction feeling clean and final. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of quiet, focused activity. I arranged for a trusted neighbor to look after my house and garden. I bought luggage, travel guides, and a new camera. I packed my bags, carefully selecting clothes for climates ranging from the cool mists of Norway to the humid heat of Thailand. With each item I packed, I felt a layer of the old me, the dutiful, long-suffering mother, sloughing away. I was becoming someone new. Or perhaps, I was becoming myself again. Through it all, a strange silence emanated from Jessica's world. I received a few automated reminder emails from wedding vendors, which I promptly deleted. Jessica herself did not call. I imagine she saw my lack of response as a sign of my sullen but ultimate acceptance. She had what she wanted: my money and my absence. She probably thought I was sitting at home, heartbroken, and would eventually send a check with a passive-aggressive congratulations card. We haven't received the check, and the deadline was today. We can't hold the booking without it. I'm sorry, Patricia, I said, my voice calm and even. There must be some confusion. I'm not involved in that wedding anymore. You'll have to speak to the bride, Jessica Harrison, or her Mark Davenport. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Not involved, but you've handled all the arrangements. All the deposits were paid from. She said they going to release the date if they don't get a wire transfer for $50,000 in the next hour. Is this some kind of joke? No, Jessica. It's not a joke, I said calmly. Why would I pay for a party I'm not invited to? The simple, unassailable logic of the question seemed to short-circuit her brain. What? You can't do that. Everything is arranged. 200 guests are coming tomorrow. The caterers, the flowers, everything depends on the venue. I'm sure it does, I said. And I'm sure you and Mark and Emily can pool your resources and sort it out. You're all very successful people. We don't have $50,000 just sitting around. She shrieked, the panic escalating into full-blown hysteria. Mark's money is tied up in investments. My salary is gone. You have to pay it, Mom. You promised, did I? I asked, my voice still quiet. I promised to help my daughter with her wedding. Cruise, I'll be gone for 6 months. I believe the itinerary takes me through parts of Asia around the time you'll be on your honeymoon in Bali. Perhaps we'll wave. I wish you the life you deserve. I hung up the phone. I turned it off and placed it in the bottom of my handbag. I picked up my suitcases, locked the front door of my house behind me, and walked out into the sunshine. The aftermath, I pieced together later from the flurry of emails from distant relatives that eventually found their way to my ship's inbox. The wedding, of course, was a disaster. Unable to produce the $50,000 on such short notice, they lost the venue. They spent Friday evening in a frantic, humiliating series of phone calls, trying to inform 200 guests that the wedding was not happening at the Northgate Manor. They managed to throw together a last-minute, makeshift reception in the function room of a local hotel, a drab, soulless space that apparently smelled of stale beer. The caterer, having no contract with the new venue, refused to serve. They ended up with hotel catering. Emily was mortified. The guests were confused. Jessica, I was told, cried through the entire thing. The perfect day she had been willing to sacrifice her own mother for had dissolved into a chaotic, embarrassing farce. Meanwhile, I was standing on the deck of a ship, a glass of champagne in my hand, watching the skyline of Manhattan recede as we sailed out into the vast open expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I thought of David, and I knew he would be smiling. I thought of Jessica, and for the first time, I felt not pain, but a quiet, cleansing pity. She had gotten her wedding. free of drama, free of awkwardness, and free of me. And in doing so, she had lost everything that truly mattered. I raised my glass to the horizon, to the new world waiting for me. I had been uninvited from a single day in her life. In return, I had invited myself to the rest of mine.